There was a time when this image of mules hauling a train of wagons seemed to be everywhere. On television, in the movies, on billboards. There were postcards and playing cards, jigsaw puzzles and children's cutouts. There was a plastic scale model. It starred in a children's book and songs were written about it. Twice it appeared in the most famous parade in the world. It thrilled people at a World's Fair and was even a guest at a president's inauguration. It was present in nearly every pantry, cupboard, and garage in America. Laundry aids, cleansers, and other household products were decorated with its picture. This was an American icon which had reached into nearly every room in every home in America. It was called the 20 Mule Team. But why was it so popular? Why had it become a fixture in American life? And what is a 20 Mule Team anyway? This is the story of how an image of some wagons pulled by 20 mules rose to fame and captured the imagination of a country.
Hi, my name's Ted Fay. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I just recently completed this film, The 20 Mule Team of Death Valley. And in it, we tell the story of the famous 20 Mule Team. I have to tell you, it was really a privilege to do this film. I remember, and I'm sure many of you do out there also, remember 20 Mule Team borax in packages that were something like this, and Boraxo and products like that that use the famous 20 Mule Team in their packaging. Well, in the next half hour, we're going to show you segments from my film, The 20 Mule Team of Death Valley. And we're going to introduce you to some of the people that helped make that film possible. Some of the mule skinners, some of the people who did the music, and even the president of the Borax Company. One of the things that was really extraordinary was to see the original borax wagons hitched up to the 20 Mule Team. And in this next segment, we go into some detail and really describe those borax wagons, those original wagons that were used to haul borax out of Death Valley. So sit back, listen, enjoy this clip from the 20 Mule Team of Death Valley, which tells the story of those borax wagons.
Perry studied the largest wagons of the day, such as the Murphy wagons built in St. Louis as early as 1841. The wagon beds were 16 feet long and 6 feet high. The rear wheels were 7 feet, with tires up to 8 inches in width. There was also the Studebaker Company of South Bend, Indiana, which in the 1870s advertised the Nevada Iron Axle Wagons, which were made of sufficient capacity to carry 20,000 pounds or 10 tons. Once Perry had his plans, he contracted workers at Mojave to build the wagons. He ordered 10 freighters at $900 each and 5 water wagons with iron tanks. Just like Murphy's, these wagon beds were 16 feet long by 6 feet high. The rear wheels were 7 feet in diameter, and the front wheels were 5 feet. The steel tires were 8 inches wide. Years later, they were touted as the largest wagons ever built, but John Perry knew better. There were none larger, but there were other wagons as large.
Well, we're here in Boron, California, out at the Borax Mine, with Preston Chiaro, who's the CEO and president of Borax Worldwide. And I wanted to stop and talk to Preston because, Preston, you're really in the historic link here of the Borax Company. And do you've been really involved with restoring, recreating the 20 Mule Team, bringing it back to life. Do you feel any kind of a link to the original guys who started this, to Mr. Coleman, Mr. Smith, those guys?
I don't know how you cannot have that sort of historic link. Not only is the 20 Mule Team an icon of the American West, but it's core to our whole business. I mean, it's a symbol of the pioneering effort in the company, something that we try to continue today.
In terms of education, we've done this film on the history of the 20 Mule Team and think it's a good educational tool and that sort of thing. How important do you feel it is to educate or let people know about this kind of history?
Well, I think it's critically important. Again, the wagons are a great example of ingenuity and innovation. And that's what the Borax Company is all about. It started 128 years ago out in the deserts of Nevada and California. The creation of the wagons, these long haul freight wagons, was a big innovation at the time. We bring students here to this visitor center to show them the innovation of last century, and they can look just over the hill here and see the innovation of this century and look at modern mining techniques. So you can see the whole development of the mining industry in the American West all in one spot, but all with a constant theme throughout it, which is this notion of innovation and pioneering.
Well, to put together a 20 mule team, you really do need to have guys that know mules. And one of those guys is Freddie Valentino. We went out to Lancaster, California, and we met Freddie at his ranch there at Valentino Mules and talked to him about what it was like to work on a 20 mule team. You told me you have a phrase about when you get up in the morning and you talk to your mules.
Yeah, I have that because I've been through it in real life, but I always have a discussion with my mules before I hitch them up. You work for me today, or do I work for you? That's as simple as it is.
Well, listen, we came out here and shot your mules that day for the film for the 20 mule team, and they were really frisky that morning. Do you remember that?
I remember it. Normally they're not quite that way, but here you are. You come out. It's just like going to visit some of your relatives, and the kids just get out and run and play, and that's just what they knew. There was a stranger out there, and they were just kind of showing off.
Now, when you say a mule is smarter, what way is Frida smarter than Bob the horse?
Like I was telling you, it doesn't take a lot of water for these mules out in the desert when they're working. You can work them 4 hours, shut down for an hour, offer them water, they won't drink. A horse will drink instantly, and if you're not careful, he'll founder himself. And a horse, somehow, I don't know what it is, if they get spooked and get tangled, they will thrash, they will hurt themselves. A mule gets tangled, I've seen them tangled in chain link fence, and they'll stay right there. They're caught, they won't hurt themselves, and they'll figure out either to get out or wait, and they know I'm coming, and they'll get unbound.
You saw some of the raw, unedited footage of Freddie's mules. Well, now take a look at some of that same footage edited into a sequence from the film.
To pull the loaded wagons through the desert, mules were the obvious choice. They are a sterile animal, the result of pairing a female horse with a male donkey. The mule, said one enthusiast, is courageous and intelligent. In fact, a dumb mule, if there is such a thing, is smarter than a smart horse. But most important, mules were able to adapt to the desert climate and didn't require as much water as a horse. But there were two horses, the wheelers, closest to the wagons, whose agile footing helped to handle the wagons on quick turns. The mules then stretched out in pairs for 100 feet. A reporter later wrote, "The most civilized pair of mules were in the lead. The next most intelligent were in the back, just ahead of the horses. In between were all the sinful, the fun-loving, and the rawhides." The lead mules wore bells. Some claim they were a warning to other teams on the road, or to provide a rhythm for the mules to pull to. But there was another reason. Mules are very dependent on their leader, and to the mules in the back of the team who couldn't see, the bells calmed and reassured them that their leader was still there.
Well, I'm here in Bishop with Bobby Tanner, and Bobby has really brought back a lost art. And that art is the art of hitching up and driving a 20 mule team. And it's been exciting in my experience here just to be able to be near a 20 mule team, just to be able to see a 20 mule team in operation. I'd always heard about it, I've seen pictures of it, but to actually see one hitched up was really something. And Bobby, I'm just going to ask you, whatever got into you to try to hitch up 20 mules?
We have a business in which we use mules. I've been around mules all my life with the business that we were in, and Mule Days here in Bishop is a very popular event. And whenever anybody thinks of mules, one of the first things that is always comes to mind or is always spoken of is the 20 Mule team. It's kind of the premier, one of the premier things in history that the mule was used for. And so with the Mule Days as a place to display it, we decided a number of years ago to try to recreate the 20 Mule team. But it wasn't until recently, with the support of U.S. Borax, which the Borax company put the 20 Mule team in the Rose Parade, that we really spent a lot of time and tried to learn how to recreate it, try to be as authentic and operate the 20 Mule team exactly as it had been over 100 years ago. And so it's through the appearance in the Rose Parade, with the support of Borax, that got us going with the 20 Mule team, and using the Borax archives and reading as many accounts of the 20 Mule team from years ago, that we finally learned how to do it properly.
On the intelligence of a mule, somebody has said once, and we used this quote in the film, somebody said, a dumb mule, if there is such a thing, is smarter than a smart horse. What would you say to that?
I would agree with that from working with the mules. There's just a huge difference. The mules have so much more personality. You often hear that people consider mules to be stubborn. We don't find that the case at all. We just find them that they're always thinking, and it's a case of learning how to outsmart the mules. And it's pretty easy to outsmart a horse, but outsmarting a mule's much more difficult. And I wouldn't say they're stubborn by any means. They're just very intelligent.
So when you say outsmart a horse, you mean you can manipulate him easier, or what?
Well, if you put a mule in a situation that could be dangerous to the animal, a mule will not. He'll stop. He won't continue on into the situation. Where a horse, you could push him right into a situation that's very dangerous and injure the horse. Those sorts of things. That mules, it's maybe a better sense of self-preservation than a horse has, I would say, is one way to describe it.
Ideally, you're driving this team with one line. I mean, that's the way it was supposed to have been done. That's what you have been recreating. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works, the jerk line?
That was one of the major obstacles I had to overcome in recreating the 20 Mule team, is how to operate the jerk line. The jerk line being one of the major obstacles. The other was teaching the mules to cross over the chain to make a successful turn. I read lots of books, training books, studied all sorts of pictures. Nowhere did I read anything that I could find how you make a jerk line work. I studied pictures and tried different things, and finally figured it out, and it works quite well. It's a single line to the front left lead animal, and you use the line to pull. Either a steady pull signals that lead animal to turn to the left, and a series of jerks on that line signals the animal to turn to the right, and that animal steers the mule next to it, which in turn those two mules steer the entire team, and it works very well.
Now, there's the one scene where we bring the wagons up, and then what happens?
We were trying to make a turn to demonstrate for the camera how the mules jump the chain, and we're out in the desert. And one thing we really didn't take into consideration is that we were on somewhat of a road in the desert. Since we made the turn, obviously it took us off the road into some very soft sand, and you lose a lot of the pulling power when you are making a turn. And so between making a turn and going off in the sand and losing the amount of pulling power, we kind of got stuck there for a few minutes, and the mules weren't very experienced. They didn't all pull together. They all have to work together to pull a heavy load like that.
One of the things you had there that it doesn't seem like you need as many of, but you had a lot of outriders, guys on horses with the team, and sometimes they'd go up and down. Can you tell us a little bit about what they did, how that helped to put the team together?
The primary reason we were using the outriders was when you make a turn with a 20 mule team, some of the teams need to cross over the chain. There's a chain that runs down the center of the team that all the animals pull on. And some of the mules need to step across that chain to pull to the outside of the turn, because the team is very long, and if you don't have some teams on the outside of the turn, obviously the wagons would get pulled. If you're on a road where there's a cliff on the inside of the turn, the wagons would get pulled off the cliff or into the mountain that you're trying to get around. And our mules did not know on their own at that point when they were supposed to jump over the chain to pull to the outside of the turn. And so that was what the outriders were for. They were teaching the mules to jump over the chain. And when we got out in the sand, we had a couple of the teams across the chain, but at that point they were across the chain, but they still didn't quite know what to do once they were across the chain. And so that was the purpose of the outriders, was just teaching the mules to cross over that chain. Once we had done it for a couple of weeks and the mules figured out what they were supposed to do, then the mules would just see the chain coming towards them and they would step across and pull it without any problem. But that's the primary function of the outriders, is teaching the mules to cross the chain so we can make a successful turn.
Turning a corner was another challenge.
Get up, Mule.
When approaching a sharp turn, the lead mule and the next 5 pairs turned normally. The next pair would jump over the chain that ran between the mules. So would the next, and then the next. They pulled in the opposite direction from the rest of the team, taking the wagons out far enough to safely make the turn. Once the wagons made the bend, the mules jumped back over the chain and pulled the wagons straight. It was perhaps one of the most extraordinary sights on the desert, and few were there to see it.
One of the most important aspects in making a film, and certainly in the making of this film, was the music. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to run into 2 musicians several years ago, Ken and Fee Graydon.
Come load up your wagons, come hitch up your mules. Don't mind when the city folk call you damn fools. It's a life that we've chosen. We make the rules. We're the teamsters who haul them all day. We haul to the railroad from the Harmony Mills, up from the desert and over the hills. Every trip we'll try all of your skills with a 20 mule team to Mojave. So load up your wagons, come hitch up your mules. Don't mind when the city folk call you damn fools. It's a life that we've chosen. We make the rules. We're the teamsters who haul the Mojave.
Well, we managed to catch up with Ken and Fee Graydon at the Santa Clarita Cowboy Poetry Festival here at the Melody Ranch. And Ken and Fee have done a wonderful job of providing the music for the 20 Mule team of Death Valley film. And I just wanted to do a little bit of an interview with them, talk to them a little bit about, well, why would you guys sing about mules and teamsters in Death Valley?
Well, obviously, because I love history. I love the history of the Southwest and California, and that was a very large portion of Southern California's history in that era. It was a very recognizable trademark with the 20 Mule teams. The romance of that era was pronounced, and why wouldn't you?
So load up your wagons, come hitch up your mules. Don't mind when the city folk call you damn fools. It's a life that we've chosen. We make the rules. We're the teamsters who haul the Mojave.
Let's talk about when we saw the 20 Mule teams hitched up in Death Valley there for the first time. What was that like? What was the feeling like?
A step back in time to an era that doesn't exist anymore. The fact that there were 20 mules in a line doing one job, the way they would have done it now for entertainment, but the way they would have done it 100 years ago as a matter of labor, was just fascinating.
Don't mind mind when the city folk call you damn fools. It's a life that we've chosen. We make the rules. We're the teamsters who haul to Mojave.
But you know, it does bring back those memories of Death Valley days and Ronald Reagan and that old familiar bugle call.
But it takes it from the 2D TV screen, and there it is in living color and 3 dimension, and don't walk behind the mule, right there in front of you.
That's right. And we were just so privileged and so proud that that Borax put the team together so that we could see it, and Bobby Tanner had the team to hitch up to the original wagons. And though you may not be able to see it live and in person like we were able to, you will be able to, through this film, at least experience what it might have been like to see the 20 Mule team in action. So we invite you to take a look at the 20 Mule team of Death Valley.
From Granite Wells, the route turned west, descending steeply. Once on the desert plain, it was 3 dry camps on a long, dusty, and hot trail. Hot enough, sometimes, for the teams to travel at night. Then around 3 p.m. on the 10th day, they were greeted by the sight of a rail car, painted with the single word, Mojave.
Wagons, come hitch up your mules. Don't mind when the city folk call you damn fools. It's a life that we've chosen. We make the rules. We're the teamsters who haul to Mojave.
At Mojave, the borax was emptied into freight cars for shipment to San Francisco for refining and packaging. The teamsters were paid when they arrived, earning $100 to $120 a month. The swampers made $75. In their one free afternoon and evening, most of the men gambled away their earnings at a card betting game called Faro. It was a good thing for us, said John Perry, for the teamster could go broke in one night and be ready to go out over the road in the morning. There was no fear of men taking their pay and leaving.
The 20 Mule team was used in film and television long before our cameras ever rolled on them. And in fact, it really became famous in its use as an advertising and promotional icon.
The familiar strains of the 20 Mule team bugle call is known to millions of American families.
But in 1952, its fame would rise to new heights as it became a star in the new medium of the mid-20th century, television.
Howdy, folks. I'm the old ranger of Death Valley.
Death Valley days moved from radio to TV. Every week, people could hear and see moving images of the famous 20 Mule team. And its image was everywhere. On TV, in magazines, in cartoon strips, on flower seeds, on playing cards. And you could even get an exact scale model for $1 and a box top from 20 Mule Team Borax. The new phenomenon of television made the 20 Mule team a household word, with its image appearing in nearly every kitchen, laundry room, and garage in America. With a run of 18 years, Death Valley Days was one of television's most successful shows. It had 5 hosts, including the old ranger Stanley Andrews, and later, a young actor named Ronald Reagan.
I'm Ronald Reagan, your host on Death Valley Days.
Let me ask you this, how did you feel being a part of recreating something as historic as the 20 Mule team?
Hey, it was wonderful for me. I knew about a lot of this stuff. I went up there in Death Valley. I seen the museum, looked at all the pictures and books. If you sit out there long enough, especially there at the dry lakes, and all of a sudden you'll hear them bells on those mules coming across the desert hauling that borax, and it just inspires you.
There are fewer and fewer big, strong, able men who get out there and take the world with their hands. And all the guys who handled the harnesses and all of the trappings that go with they're big, they're heavy, they lug those things around, on, off, handling 20 animals, training them. It was a wonderful thing to see how how quickly they moved and how they were so in tune with the animals, and the animals, of course, were so wonderfully trained.
It was really seeing the wagons out in the Mojave Desert with really nothing much else around. And I have to say, I got choked up just watching them roll by.
Thanks for joining us in the making of the 20 Mule Team of Death Valley. We believe these stories are important, and we're glad you joined us because we want to get them to as wide an audience as possible. We want you to know about them, and we want others to know about them. And this is our first in the series called Tales from the Desert. Well, thanks for tuning in today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
In the 1880s, the giant wagons of Death Valley with their 20 mule teams were a technological feat and the foundation of an innovative American business. Only 20 years later, when the wagons rolled at the St. Louis World's Fair, they had already become a reminder of a way of life gone by. Today, after another century, it is difficult even to imagine the time when hard labor and ingenuity could build a fortune from the rock and soil of a wilderness. In our age of information technology, the image of these wagons pulled by mules is oddly out of place. Yet for those who know its place in America's past, the 20 Mule Team remains a symbol from a simpler time of the enduring American dream.